Welcome, welcome. There are 10 empty seats for 10 Grandmasters that work at H2O. 3 couldn't make it today. That's Casanova, Matthias Müller, also known as Faron, and I think one more, Bojan, I think is not here right now, so we'll have 10, that should be enough. That's our biggest assembly of Grandmasters we've ever had, and it's a great pleasure to let them present their insights, and hopefully we can become a little bit more like Grandmasters. I'm only a master, so I have a lot to learn still. Please, let's start with Branden. Olivier, SRK, Mark, Yauhen, Pavel, Dmitry, Shivam, Rohan, and Kim. Please introduce yourself and tell us your strength.
I'm Kim Montgomery. I was Dynamic 24 on Kaggle. My strengths probably feature engineering.
Hi, I'm Rohan. My favorite stuff about Kaggle is to try to build the best single model, which is very contrary to most of the winning solutions.
Hi, I'm Shivam. In H2, I'm working on Quantum or Q. In Kaggle, I mainly specialize in coming up with data stories or end-to-end solutions for unstructured problems. And one of my other skills is NLP, in which, again, I deal with unstructured data and bring in the solution which can really solve the problem in a more fruitful or a more structured manner.
Hello, my name is Dmitry Larko. You will be surprised but I'm a Kaggle Grandmaster. So, and I worked for H2O for 3 years. I invited basically Driver CI to its first version, and I'm still working to improve it and to make it as best as possible.
I'm Pavel. Currently, I'm number 4 on Kaggle, and the highest rank was number 2. At H2O, I'm doing computer vision and time series, and at Kaggle, I really enjoyed data leaks.
Hi, my name is Yauhen Babakhin. I'm joined H2O like half a year ago, and mostly I'm working on computer vision stuff and images. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Mark Landry. I've been at H2O for about 4.5 years, where I first teamed up with Arno half a year before that. So I was on the first of these panels. This is my first time on a Grandmaster panel, so that was this year. Thanks.
Hi, I'm SRK, also known as Sudalai Rajkumar. So I work on the NLP stuff at H2O. So like other than NLP, I also do like simple exploration notebooks in kernel, which is like mostly around EDA, which is my strength as well.
Hi, I'm Olivier. I've been starting at H2O 6 months ago. I like time series and feature engineering mainly, but my biggest strength is to team up with these guys.
Hi, I'm Branden. I've been at H2O for almost 3.5 years now. And actually, my first H2O was H2O New York. First day of work was H2O New York 3.5 years ago. I guess my biggest strength, I don't know, I'm kind of just mediocre at everything, I guess. Feature engineering, I suppose, is, yeah, I'll go with that.
So if you have questions for them, please enter them into Slido, and then at the end we can ask some of your questions to the Grandmasters. So my first question will be, how much time do you spend on Kaggle on average per day? Let's say, what was your peak over all these years that you participated? Does it take 1 hour a day, or 5 minutes, or 10 hours? What would you say? And you don't all have to answer, just those who feel like it.
I'd say for me it's been declining, but probably because more competitions are image competitions, so it's training time takes a lot more time. So you just kind of set up a model and let it run. Whereas 2 years ago, I was doing a lot more tabular competitions, which you're doing a lot of feature engineering and some people trying to find leaks or whatever. It takes a lot of time to do the feature engineering, and so yeah,
Yeah, I used to spend probably 10 hours a day on Kaggle, and well, now I'm mainly focusing on Kaggle during the weekends. Yeah, H2O is quite, it's challenging enough for me now.
So I actually quit high-frequency trading career to pursue Kaggle full-time. And I've been doing it for a year and a half, like every day, 10 hours per day. And that's how I became a Grandmaster.
Yeah, like Branden, my time has kind of gone up and down, I guess, but not for the same reasons. So I think when I was going at it the most, yeah, it's probably on average maybe 4 hours a night or something like that. Now you just kind of like pick and choose the competition. So I'll get involved in some and put some little submissions in, but if I see one that I like and one that seems interesting to me, which is a little bit of kind of a different variant of leak finding, something that has complex data. Those are the ones I like, and I'll try to spend more time on that. But it's hard to keep up if you don't spend quite a lot of time on, especially the tabular ones, and I'm not that good at image ones anyway. So it can be intense. So right now, just with the time I have, pick and choose which ones I focus on.
So I generally did most of my Kaggle along with work. So I think during the peak time, it used to be about 6 to 7 hours every day. Obviously now it's much lesser. I think it's age. I'm getting old.
When I was active on Kaggle, it was a few hours a day.
So yeah, it's not coming out of the sky, right? You have to put these hours in. And what do you think is the best skill set that you get from doing something like Kaggle that you can translate to the real world, let's call it, to the workplace environment? Is there one skill or multiple skills?
Okay, so I'll go first. So one of the main skills that I have acquired through Kaggle is structured thinking. So more like say, when I have to approach any data science problem, so like say being at work, so it gives me an idea about like how to go through, like say what are the steps that I need to think through, and like say if I do an initial analysis, so okay, so what should I do next, and like say that kind of structured thinking, because like say through practice when we do more and more competitions and like work on more and more problems, so it comes like say it comes kind of an experience that comes with that one. So that's one skill set that I have acquired.
I think on adding on top of what SRK mentioned, so most of the problems are like highly unstructured in nature. So critical thinking, structured thinking, logical thinking, all these aspects are, I would say, really one of the important skills that I have personally learned from Kaggle. Like breaking a problem into smaller steps and then, let's say, doing creative ways of doing feature engineering. So that is one of the skill which is highly important. So in fact, in feature engineering, there are multiple ways, multiple methods. So it's about how creative we can get in, let's say, feature engineering, data cleaning, data pre-processing, etc. So as Arke mentioned, so with experience, that skill also improves, and that more techniques, more methods you get to know as such. Yeah.
So yeah, I would say that Kaggle is like all about practice. So you can't read these approaches in any books or take any online courses. So it's like coming from practice, from experience, and it is what Kaggle is providing. So it's kind of unique knowledge that you get from these competitions and some data sets.
For me, it was working on a remote distributed team and pushing it to the absolute limits. Because you have no team leads. Sometimes you don't even know people you're working with, but you're really trying hard.
I would say one of the things that I always liked about it, and maybe it's a skill and maybe it's not, but treating it like homework almost, and that you struggle with this problem. If you've really put the effort into it, at the end, Kaggle is a very welcoming place. People are open with what they've done, and sometimes you just have to stare yourself in the face, and you know that you sat on that problem for 2 months and you didn't find what that person said, even though it seems pretty reasonable. And so I think it's not honesty, that's not really what it is, but there's a transparency to it of what your gaps are, and you try to close those, and you try to close those as much as you can. So there's a lot of experience out there. And I think one of the skills that I look for when we try to hire people is just the multitude of different data sets. And so you get an idea of what data is when you go on Kaggle, and I would say that was something I had seen back in the days of data warehousing and reporting and all that, but I know someone who's done all that can not just get in the one data set that you sit on for 2 years and you're in the work world, or 5 years or something like that, but you know, it's really useful to see the people that are good at it can do it on any different data set. That's really valuable.
Yeah, I would think that probably the biggest skill is on Kaggle, you're given a train set and test set. And for the test set, you have a public leaderboard and a private leaderboard. And usually people would just focus on the public leaderboard because that's where you can show off, really. But at the end of the day, at the end of the competition, it's the private leaderboard that counts. And the biggest skill I think we have is really to be able to make models that generalize well, so that you're still well ranked on the private leaderboard and you can get prizes.
What are some of the tricks or mistakes that people make or don't make to get to this point where they can make models that don't overfit? What's the secret sauce, if there's anything? Are there like top 5 at least that you can tell us? Like, is it parameter tuning or feature engineering or validation scheme or access to GPUs or thinking outside the box? Which one is it?
Well, competition-wise, obviously thinking outside of the box and finding some leaks quite beneficial, right? Mm-hmm. But in that case, you kind of, instead of solving the problem, you basically, you somehow exploit the gaps in the rules, right? Mm-hmm. Which is fun, I can give it that, but not very, scalable approach, because it's all, the leaks always mostly time different, and you can apply actual leaks in real life. What actually really helpful if you try to boil everything down to some specific skills and specific approaches, you really have to understand how to validate your data properly, because the rest will follow, right? If you apply a right validation schema, you can do like a complex feature engineering, you can do like thinking outside of the box in the right way, you can do a lot of stuff. But if your validation schema isn't correct, it will basically lead you to the wrong path, basically, and you won't be able to be in the first places. Especially now, the closer you to the top, the more important this part become. If you, let's say, in a bronze medal section, validation schema might be not that important. For silver medals, it might be actually more important, but for top 10 places, or especially for first place, it's basically a vital.
So another important skill is, of course, ensembling the models, like creating a right ensembling strategy. We can come up with very good small weak learners or good, small models, but in the end, small improvements can be obtained if we are doing, let's say, aggregating the models together, or we are stacking the models together in a right manner. So I think that's another important skill which is there.
Yeah, I would say that competition on Kaggle, usually it's the duration is about a couple of months, and it is not like a sprint, it's more like a marathon. So you should be prepared that it's like a lot of your ideas will fail, and you have to find like some kind of subset of ideas that work. And I would say that you need some like desire, time, and like ready to fail. So it's kind of like, marathon.
Any more mistakes people make? Like sometimes you have drift, right? I just participated in an IEEE fraud problem. We spent 1 week on it, and we missed something obvious in the end. We didn't read the instructions that the creator of the competition wrote. They said, don't try to classify transactions, classify cards, credit cards. So you have to find how multiple transactions are linked to one card, and then you mark them all as fraud or not fraud. You find the time structure, you group by the card, you make new features, and so on. So this feature engineering is not something that can happen always out of the box. So we're trying to still figure out ways how driverless can do this. But this was kind of a principal mistake, to not look at the problem statement, right? And I could imagine that this is a real question. In the real world, you don't have a statement necessarily. It just says make more money or reduce some churn, and you don't exactly know how to frame it as. So maybe the idea is to brainstorm a little bit more and let maybe the laborious tasks of tuning be done by a tool like driverless. Do you think that deep learning can do all of that at some point, or is that just always going to be just one more piece in the puzzle?
Well, you know, the ability to automatically create features for you, obviously it's extremely attractive, right? Which actually, and people hope deep learning can be an answer to this question. So I really think the research will go into be in that direction for sure. And we'll continue in this direction for sure. We're not there yet. I believe we will be there like in the recent future, but obviously I cannot give like any specific terms like how long it's going to take.
What do you think?
Well, I mean, I think part of that is how you, it goes back to what Dmitry said, how you validate things. A lot of those features that may look fine if you're using the wrong validation strategy, and that was part of that competition, a little part of that competition, but, and a lot of the ones, those are the most interesting to me, are the ones where you have to put some thought of how you validate the models. And so if you look at things that people that try Kaggle and fail quickly, they usually mess their validation up. And so they see this huge public-private slip on the leaderboard. And so I used to be good at kind of figuring out what that is. And that's, so do I think deep learning will ever take care of that? I don't think so. And so I think in driverless, we've tried to put a lot of energy into allowing people to put a holdout set in there, put fold columns, use a time column, all these things to help you. But we can't take you the last mile. You got to think about your data set, how you're going to get that data in production, and what the difference is from your training set so that we validate it correctly for you, and then you get the right model at the end of the day. I mean, deep learning can't solve that for you because the same data set with different targets, you need to validate different ways. You just can't tell that a little bit. If you give us a time column, we'll get as close as we can, but ultimately, I don't think you can do that, certainly not for all problems.
Can you maybe tell us a little bit more about your daily operations? Do you have cloud servers running all the time? And do you have GitHub accounts? How do you know what to do next? What's running at all times? Is it just one idea per day or per week? Or do you have 100 things going in parallel? What's the best way to approach this?
Well, actually, that depends when is the end of the competition. Usually you would start really easy and just do maybe 1 or 2 models a day and things like that. But when the end of the competition approaches, yeah, I can have 2 cloud servers running with GPUs and my own box with 2 GPUs and a big CPU, just running all sorts of models and hyperparameter tuning, yeah.
It also depends on the type of competition, say like if it's a structured or unstructured competition, say mostly like when it comes to unstructured competitions, like most of the times I will be running multiple GPUs, like but say if it's a structured competition, so most of the time will be spent on actually feature engineering, looking at the data as Mark was mentioning and like coming up with new features, and like the actual computation time will be kind of lesser compared.
Yeah, similar with me. I spend the great majority of my time on feature engineering, and then at the end, when I'm just tuning models, that can be kind of computationally intensive, just running different models with different parameters, but I spend the great majority of my time trying to find the best features for the problem.
Yeah, as for hardware, I do have 2 dev boxes, like 6 GPUs in total. I think it was like one of the greatest investments for me. Because I could get into a lot of teams on Kaggle because I get a lot of hardware. It also helps a lot during the winters in Russia. Yeah.
So I generally like to focus on a single competition at a time. I do spend time looking at the data, but I often try to experiment and run multiple experiments in parallel just to try out a lot of different features.
How do you know which features to make? Is it all intuition, or is it reading previous winners' posts, or is it basically some statistical technique you employ to do feature selection and then interaction finders and then making groupings by those, or is it all ad hoc?
Well, right now, driverless AI helps me a lot.
So basically it depends, right? If you had a competition with the same nature or from the same domain before, well, it's always useful, to have a look into the final solutions. That definitely will give you a food for thoughts. So, but in general, it's really ad hoc in most of the cases, right? So obviously, most of us has some like a prepared script, maybe, prepared approaches which we try to apply, and maybe in some sort of a semi-automatic or automatic way, including driver say, yeah. But it's still, the last mile. Still, you just have to explore your data, plot your data a lot, trying to understand why data distribution looks like it looks. So, asking you a lot of different questions, trying to understand the nature of the data. Yeah, that's how it goes for me.
Has there ever been a time where you made a mistake that you regret now, where you could have just one more submission or changed something in the past? Is there something you learned the hard way?
So there's one competition I clearly remember. I think it was the restaurant revenue prediction one. So I did get a gold medal for that, and I'd shared my code on the forum, and one of the fellow competitors, he used my code, and all he did was, from the training data, he removed one outlier, and that would have put me first on the private LB. So that's when I learned the importance of, sometimes removing outliers can be very, very useful.
Yeah, I think I once was a leader of the team, and like 1 hour before the competition ended, everybody was asleep, and I've changed the final submission, which was overfitted to the public, and we didn't get the gold, and got the silver, and one of my team members, she was crying the entire night after that.
Yeah, I think we all chose a wrong submission once. I remember one where I probably dropped 1,000 places, and that was a nightmare. And I could see one that really was great on private leaderboard and didn't look that good on public. So that's why really we need to focus more on generalization and not really the public leaderboard. And that's probably the main error people on Kaggle would do, which is really trying to get the best place on public leaderboard and not really care about what will happen at the competition end.
There's a recent one. We didn't finish that great anyway, but it was a decent, I guess, for the effort we put into it a little bit. But there was a decision I almost made that would have cost us a few thousand places, and I was this close to doing it. So it's a team of people that are actually in this room. And it was mostly kernel stuff. That's unfortunately, when you don't have that much time, sometimes you can still have fun by borrowing a lot of really good ideas from other people and just building on top of that. That's fun for some people, not for other people. But if that's all the time you got, it can be fun. So we were doing that, and then a magical kernel came out in the last couple days with no source, and nobody knew where it came from. And this person actually planted an Easter egg in there, and you couldn't tell. And I knew that. So I reached out to the team, and I told them that. I was like, well, this is really good, and it's fun to kind of chase the spots, and hundreds of people have passed us by using that, but it looks dangerous. But really, I didn't feel like it was dangerous, because I've been on the other side of that, where everyone uses that one, and they pass you out. And but then with, I don't know, maybe half an hour left of that competition, I realized my teammate was actually the leader, and I was going to put the final model on top of that. And I realized if I put 2 models in, and she couldn't change it, it would automatically select our 2, and we wouldn't get. So I told them the plan was 1 with that and 1 without. And the one without was the one that lifted up 300 spots, and the one with it would have sunk us 2,000. But I was this close to putting that second one in, knowing that, ooh, I'll get both in this way, and we won't actually do that plan I said.
Yeah, I had a case when I've got a good submissions that was preparing before the end of the competition. And I got, I don't know, maybe 10 seconds before the end, after the end, and so I've got no time to submit it, and it costs about 100 positions. Yeah, so it's kind of 10 seconds only.
What do you think is the biggest skill set that you got from doing Kaggle? And maybe also for people, which one is the one that they should focus on most? So let's say you forget all the parameter tuning that you did in years past. Is there one thing you would recommend everybody to just read up on today? If there was 1 hour they could spend on something, what would that hour be?
Well, actually, it's very hard to think about like some specific skill, right? Especially if the skill is generalized. So I am going to talk about the general skill, right? Mm-hmm. That's a skill that you cannot learn in 1 hour because that skill is a dedication to the problem. You have to spend, a lot of hours on Kaggle to develop the skill, but it's definitely useful, right? Because it's still like Evgeny mentioned, it's a marathon. It's not like a sprint. So you have to be quite dedicated and focused on the problems in order to win.
For me, it is investing time in producing a better quality code. Because a lot of data scientists, they are not like computer scientists, and this one is missing.
Finding leakage has definitely been an important skill. Probably over half of the contests have some kind of leakage, so I've gotten pretty good at figuring out where it is so I can avoid it when I'm doing modeling in real life.
Don't forget you put in your Slido questions. We have 5 more minutes to go, so at some point we can switch over. I'll ask one more question. If there was one thing you could tell to Kaggle, what would that be? If you could correct or steer Kaggle, what would you ask them to do? Does anybody have any requests?
Yes. Please hire more Grandmasters to validate your data.
We can we can first take a step, and then they can help Kaggle. Let's put it this way. Yeah, if you're a Grandmaster, you should definitely apply at H2O. Another one of those moments where we can mention that. And also, if you're a Kaggler, not a Grandmaster, we have a few of those Kaggle masters that are very promising, and they're not far off, right? If you're 300s in the world, you're pretty good. So please join us anyway. If you love Kaggle, if you love data science, this is a good time to advertise this. But yes, it's definitely hard-earned. It's a meritocracy. There's nothing for free. There's free. Perfect.
Masters will become
Grandmasters.
Grandmasters.
Is there a model to predict who will be the next Grandmaster? Here we got Slido. What is the most underrated skill does Kaggle Grandmasters have? Is there something that we didn't talk about?
Sure.
Like good sleep or something, or eating vegetarian food?
So I think one of the skills that most Grandmasters would have is management of time, because there is just so much of information, so much of sharing that is happening in the field on as well as off Kaggle. To be able to manage that along with your regular life outside Kaggle, it is a skill to have.
I'll ask one more time. I ask every year, is it R or Python that you do? Who's R, who's Python? Let's see, who's R? So 3. And who does only Python? Everybody else. So there's a trend in recent years. That's why we chose Python for driverless, by the way. But we still have R connectors, right? The client API, for example. And the scoring of mojos also runs in R. Are you reading any blogs, or where do you get your insights from? Is it just Kaggle, or do you follow other resources, maybe streaming video resources? I think some of you mentioned those to me. Let's remind everybody here where to go to learn.
I think the Twitter of Jeremy Howard, the founder of FastAI, is the greatest source out there, because he's always on the edge of the science of the deep learning. and this is a great source to follow.
So I like to follow different researches which happen in top universities like Stanford, MIT. So I follow many researchers, their Twitter handles. So every week or so they release some new research. I think that is very helpful to understand what is next state of the art thing which is coming. Like recently we had this big NLP moment where we had every day new state of the art models coming up. So I think that's one example how I got to know about more sources and all.
Yeah, so I would also agree with Shivam. So that's one thing. So like say following like the ML researchers and data science people who are like in Twitter, because like from them you get to know about all these recent things that has been happening in the field. So that's a very good piece of information. And towards data science is one another place like where I would read about in the blog section along with analytics with the like yeah, there are a couple of them.
How do you know who to team up with, by the way? Is that something that you become a clique and you do it over and over again, or do you stay loose and find someone new to work with?
I mean, I think it depends for everyone. We've had questions here of strategy of doing that, and different people do different things. So I've teamed up with SRK for quite a lot of the golds and some other really good finishes. So that's my preference, is to do it with people I know and work the whole problem. That's the minority of, I think, of Grandmasters. Most of them are more strategic about it, and you wait till the end and you team up with people that can add value. That is more logical, but I prefer it the other way, treating like a team.
And why did you choose to work at H2O.ai? Not H20, by the way. Please?
I guess for me, my last company wasn't doing data science stuff at all. So it was, so yeah, I think Mark came to me, or I met Mark, we had lunch or something, and then I ended up joining H2O like 2 days later. But yeah, I really liked H2O's culture. When I met Shri, he was very welcoming and nice, and yeah, H2O just seemed like a lot of fun, and it has been a lot of fun.
So a couple of reasons for me, like one, the company's vision and company's product are top notch. So I was really fascinated and very excited by Driverless SAI and some of the new products. And other thing is this team, like this is one of the strongest team which I'm part of. So I was very excited to share the stage and to work with these guys, so that not only like I can improve my skills, but also learn from these people, from their expertise. So I believe H2O's data science team, as well as all the other teams, so that was one of the other reasons to join H2O.
Yeah, H2O is really the only company you can collaborate with that many Kaggle Grandmaster. So, and that's why I joined.
Thank you, Shri. I think you're still here. You're going to take the stage next. Thanks again, Grandmasters.
Ladies and gentlemen, our closing keynote will start in 1 minute. Please stick around for our closing session at H2O World. Thank you.